As we pull up here, note the dark stone house to your right. Locals refer to it as the doctor's quarters for the camp hospital. An article in the Gainesville Daily Register of July 2nd, 1942 states D.K. Robinson was the physician in charge during the early period of construction. Today's Army hospitals are typically run by a designated unit with a commander and a staff. We can discern from this that the hospital staff may not have been an organized medical unit, but perhaps an ad hoc formation with a single person in charge, designated the physician in charge. Evident by the ride over, this location is a good distance from the main cantonment area of camp. So it makes sense for the hospital's chief doctor to be housed in the vicinity of the hospital. As you'll notice, this house is of much sturdier construction than most of the other camp buildings. I suppose, as they say, rank has its privilege. Opposite from the doctor's quarters on the other side of the road is the former hospital, simply referred to as the Camp House Station Hospital. Follow me through the field to see one of the few hospital structures left standing. As discussed earlier, Camp Howze was not constructed as a permanent installation. Not surprisingly, the hospital was also semi-permanent construction, and the remains are easily visible from here. You can clearly see the remaining hallway structures situated throughout the field, highlighting the size of the hospital complex and serving as a timeless reminder of the camp. Here, I have a photo of the front of the station hospital, courtesy the Morton Museum in Gainesville. The hallway systems we are standing in led to wooden buildings with wood floors built on concrete supports, very similar to the rest of the camp. These long hallways, however, are made of concrete and masonry construction with a combination of brick for the foundations and unique blocks for the walls. Locals speculate that the hallways were built as storm protective shelter or perhaps even as bomb shelters in the event of an attack on the camp. For understanding of why they say this, direct your attention to the far end of the hallway. Notice that it collapsed, but the roof section is intact. If you wanted to open your map apps and look at the satellite view again, within this field, you would see a footprint of a complete medical facility. The hospital contains surgery, dental, vision, recovery, pharmacy, general health amenities, as well as administrative and command suites. This was no doubt a full-service hospital. Some say the camp hospital was better than the civilian hospital in Gainesville. It was most certainly larger, as the camp was designed to accommodate about 3 times the population of the town. At the beginning of the war, Gainesville had a population of just under 10,000, and Camp Howze was designed to house around 30,000. The facility would have very likely treated all residents of the camp, from the soldiers to the civilians and even the prisoners of war. New soldiers processed at the camp for their initial entry training would have come to the station hospital for their health screenings and any treatment needed before beginning training. The station hospital would have employed women as civil defense and Red Cross volunteer nurses aides. Camp Howze had the first of these women volunteers in the state of Texas, with 19 women in the pioneer group for the program. A projected 150 nurses aides would need to be trained overall. Some of these women were wives of officers stationed in Camp Howze. Others would come from the local civilian community, according to the Howitzer in 1944. We've looked at a few of the long-lasting impacts of the camp which were negative. However, the Army put a massive amount of effort into minimizing the impact of the camp. At the end of the war, most everything was methodically either sold or demolished, down to even individual bricks. On our way back to the bus loading area, we'll actually pass a private house constructed with tan bricks, clearly salvaged from the hospital a few generations ago. So with that said, why these hallways structures were allowed to remain standing is a mystery to time. Remember, when we left the rail yard, I mentioned the water towers. On the way to the bus, you can find all 3. One is here on the hospital footprint, the other 2 are in the distance. They still stand, but are no longer in use. Let's board the bus for the return trip back to the airport. On the way, I'll point out 2 more items. Tall chimneys left standing. In addition to that, I'll field any questions that you may have.